It's time to see if I can summarize the entirety of prehistoric and ancient music in under 5 minutes. Let's see if I can do it. I just wasted a lot of that time. So before there was writing, there was still music. And most of that music was sung. The voice is the only instrument that you're born with. The rest of the instruments you have to make in some capacity. So the voice was naturally one of the first things that became musical. All we can really say about prehistoric music is that we assume that people were just singing. And we do know for a fact that music wasn't taught through writing it down, because most societies at this point in time that we're talking about didn't really have a system of writing. And so they just passed it by repeating it to each other and teaching it to each other orally. So what they did instead was they just sang it to each other and taught it to each other that way. You had to memorize any songs, which I mean, like, you probably weren't singing unless you wanted to sing the song anyway. So yeah, it was a tradition of passing music down orally from one person to the next, much like storytelling was done in that same time period. So we really don't have any record of music that happened in that prehistoric time because it wasn't written down. But as soon as music started getting written down, we get literally a tiny bit more. We start to see cultures creating their own system of music notation. And what's really, really interesting about this is that they did it in stone tablets. Because like paper wasn't super a thing except for like certain cultures, so we mostly see it in stone tablets, and boy is it beautiful. Take a look. Doesn't that just look like it sounds beautiful? No. So once music started getting written down into an actual notation, and the earliest record of a composer that we have is actually a female composer named Enheduanna. She was a priestess around the year 2300, and she wrote lyrics. We don't actually have any record of the music that the lyrics were set to, but we do know that music and lyrics were intertwined at that time. You didn't really do poetry without music, or dancing for that matter. But around this same time, we start seeing evidence of other instruments being made, usually out of things like wood or bone, and they're usually things like flutes that you hold diagonally in front of you, like you would hold a clarinet today. Single-reeded instruments like the clarinet, a couple double-reeded instruments even. They ain't pretty, but they're there. And we also start seeing some harp-like instruments with a set of strings that are plucked in order to create sound. And these kind of create the harmonic palette of what ancient music would become. So with what little remnants there are of the era of ancient music, we have been able to salvage a few songs. Most of them are damaged to some extent, and so the song either had to be like improvised in certain sections, or there's an instrument missing that we know was there but it got too damaged and so we couldn't recreate it. The earliest song we have record of is Hurrian Hymn number 6, and we literally know nothing about the context of this hymn. And that makes it really hard to talk about the history of music in this sense, but all we really know about this hymn is that it was meant for lyre and a singer. It was damaged, so we only have the lyre part. So the first full composition that we know about didn't come until much, much later, and we're talking 100 BC, and that is the Epitaph of Cyclos. You'll notice that ancient music has simplicity to it. It never got super duper, I mean, to our knowledge, it never got super duper complex. It was always one instrument, maybe an instrument with a singer on top. The melody was normally either monophonic, which you learned about in terms of your textures, meaning one sound, or heterophonic, which you'll learn about later, which is two people singing the same thing, but they like improvise on it, and so they're not always singing the same thing. But most of the music was really simplistic monophonic or heterophonic sounds. And people were just bopping to it. Like, imagine, like, this music was the Katy Perry and Ariana Grande of the BC times. It was like people would sing it to each other, they would dance to it, they would party with it. And like, we listened to this and we're like, it's really boring. But what's so fascinating that you'll get to see over the course of time is how we build a bridge from the simplicity of this music that really stuck into one category and how it gradually moves to the music that we know today. And we even see like music just totally intertwined with the church. And then as time goes on, we kind of see this fork in the road where, okay, now there's pop music and there's church music, and those are two very different spheres. And that becomes such an interesting development to watch. So, I mean, you may walk away from this video feeling like I didn't learn that much. That's because there's not much to know about ancient music, but that's what makes it so interesting. There's so much mystery surrounding what music was doing and how it was communicated to each other. But it's really cool to see that even in today's music, we're still finding little snippets of ancient music still tucked away in what we know now. So there you have it, a very brief, vague explanation of ancient music. But I mean, like, that's ancient music in a statement: brief, vague. Feel free to schedule an appointment with me to ask more about this if it's interesting to you. I think ancient music is some of the most interesting stuff there is. When we get to Renaissance, I low-key hate Renaissance and medieval music, but I'm still going to teach it to you. Couldn't keep it under 5 minutes. Sorry, so much content. Looking forward to seeing how that works out down the line when music gets even more complex. See you guys later.